Welcome everyone, this is On Just Restart, and this time we're talking about Metroid Dread. This game has finally been revealed. We've been talking about this game for over a year already, actually. If we go back to last June, we put out a video saying that Mercury Steam would be developing the next Metroid game, and it would be a side-scrolling Metroid game. It would likely be a sequel to Fusion, or Metroid 5, and that's exactly what has been revealed. It's finally here. It looks amazing. I am so excited for this game. There are so many different things I would like to talk about for this game, but today what I decided to focus on was this very interesting sort of direction Nintendo seems to be taking with Metroid Dread. It's their focus. It's what Nintendo is sort of pushing at E3. It's what Nintendo is sort of marketing right now. It's the face of their social media right now. What I'm arguing is that Metroid Dread for this year is Nintendo's big holiday game. Now sure, there are some other big selling contenders as well, but Metroid Dread is going to be the face of Nintendo this holiday. So we're talking about that, why this is happening, how this is happening, and what it may mean for the future of Metroid, including Metroid Prime 4. Now before we jump into things, let me very quickly talk about my social media. You may see a few different things here on screen. You can check that all out. It is linked in the description below. And of course, if you like what you're seeing here, you can subscribe. So all throughout this year, the 2D Metroid was being rumored to actually come out this year, in time for Metroid's 35th anniversary. And sure enough, in the Direct, as we sort of discussed beforehand, Nintendo would bring up Metroid Prime 4, say that it exists and development is still going, but then transition into a trailer for the next new side-scrolling Metroid game, which is Metroid 5 or Metroid Dread. And what we saw from this initial trailer, I gotta say, was pretty impressive. As far as I could really imagine for a side-scrolling 2D Metroid game to be pushed, I think they pretty much did just that. And it seems to be going in the direction I was sort of hoping. So what I'm getting at here is that throughout the game, yes, it's that quality, tried and true, traditional, side-scrolling Metroidvania gameplay, but with a number of enhancements, but they're also doing some things to sort of, perhaps, blur that boundary a little bit between two-dimensional and three-dimensional. So the first trailer opens up with some first-person perspectives, which I've been arguing for a while would be something this Metroid game would have, because I believe Metroid Dread is the lead-up, or the beginning of Nintendo's big marketing lead-up to revitalize the Metroid franchise and to peak or climax with the release of Metroid Prime 4, because that is the big 3D first-person perspective Metroid game that's coming later down the road. It's being built by Retro Studios, but it's a big ambitious project on a similar level to the likes of The Legend of Zelda, such as Breath of the Wild. So throughout Metroid Dread, I believe we're going to be seeing more first-person perspective, at least scenes, to sort of hint at and pay homage to the Metroid Prime part of the series. But it's not just these first-person perspective cutscenes, but throughout the entire game, there's certainly a fair bit of scope and ambition that we're seeing with this 2D game than we've seen with other 2D games from Nintendo in the past. There seems to be this dynamic and seamless transition with all these different cutscenes. There's a lot of behind-the-shoulder moments, there's a lot of dynamic sort of camera perspectives as Samus is taking on these different enemies or escaping from them, and it's all fluid, it's all in real time, and it shows off the beauty of this game. Up close and personal, you see the visuals for this 2D game, and it looks really, really impressive. Again, as far as I could have really imagined a 2D game to be pushed, Nintendo and Mercury Steam seem to be doing just that. But it's not just from a visual and presentation perspective that this game seems to be getting pushed, but also from a gameplay perspective as well. Yes, we are getting that tried and true traditional sort of Metroid style gameplay, but they are also enhancing it as well. They are sort of picking up from where they left off with Metroid Samus Returns, a remake by Mercury Steam. In that game, they did a few things to sort of speed up the gameplay. The big one was the counter. This time around, they've done things to make that even more fluid. Now you can dash in counters, so you can move forward, continue with your movement, going quickly, counter, bash an enemy, see a nice cool little cinematic, and keep going. but then on top of that, they also added the slide mechanic, which also sort of maintains your momentum and allows you to slide through different areas and holes and even under intimidating enemies, such as the Emmy. And on the note of the Emmy, let me just say the Emmy is very impressive in a lot of different ways. It is terrifying, and it clearly is there to sort of convey this concept of dread. That is something that chases you and follows you. It is something you cannot defeat. Yet, it is in this game, and it's sort of building up this sort of motif of terror, this theme of dread. And that is very exciting, and I think it bodes well for the future of this game and the franchise as a whole. Some of you may be wondering why I am talking about some of the gameplay elements or the presentational elements for Metroid Dread. It's not to summarize the trailer, because that's not what this video is about. It's actually because I think these elements are very, very important. So the idea of Samus moving more quickly and being more fluid and showing off her agility, this is something that many Metroid fans have been wanting for a long time. Samus is not a tank. Samus is the most powerful warrior in the universe. So with that in mind, she should be agile, she should be quick, she should be capable of just demolishing through enemies and maintain that momentum moving forward, not just being a slow-moving, vulnerable tank. And that's perhaps one of the very few criticisms some may have for the Metroid Prime series. An amazing series, but it is sort of slow and tanky. But I believe that with Metroid Dread, we are seeing this direction that Nintendo overall is taking for the future of the series, and I think some of this will transition into Metroid Prime 4 as well. I think once we see Metroid Prime 4, that tanky movement that we saw in the first three will be remedied to some extent. They will make her movements more fluid, more quick, something that will be more accurately representative of who Samus is as a character. So that's why I'm sort of talking about the fluidity of Samus's movement in Metroid Dread, because I do believe it is representative of the direction overall Nintendo is taking with Metroid. Which also brings me to the Dread element here. Metroid Dread is a concept that's been in the works for over 15 years, yet only now it's finally coming to fruition, and that is very exciting. But a lot of what the Dread concept has to do with is fear and terror, and these are elements we've seen in the Metroid series before. But now that that element is coming to the forefront with the actual branding and title of the game, that also bodes well for the future of the series, I think. Because that's also another element that a lot of Metroid fans feel is important to the series, and it's something that should push it forward. The first Metroid game was inspired by the horror movie Alien. So with those kind of roots, you would think the series would have more terror and horror elements. So thankfully, Metroid Dread seems to be doing just that. Not to say that the game is entirely a horror game, but there are those elements and it is important to the series, and it is also suggestive that they will be carrying that moving forward, and perhaps it'll be more in the forefront than previous games, which I think will help to differentiate and make the Metroid games that much more interesting. And yes, this would also include the likes of Metroid Prime 4. Story-wise, Metroid Dread and Metroid Prime 4 may not be that closely connected. However, in terms of Nintendo's marketing and branding, I think they will be. The way Nintendo's presenting Metroid Dread, they are using it to sort of reacquaint the world with the Metroid franchise. Not only did they bring it up in the Direct, but they opened up the Nintendo Treehouse with a Metroid Dread segment. But before they jumped into the actual Treehouse segment, they had a little bit of a developer diary where they discussed the history of Metroid. Yoshio Sakamoto takes his time to describe this series to the world, to newcomers and veterans as well, and the idea here is to get people to understand what Metroid is, but to also let people know that you can jump in with this particular one. You do not need to have played previous games. This one is a great one to start. So what's important about this is that the world, a lot of people who may not even been alive when we were getting the likes of Metroid Prime and Fusion, are now seeing this exciting looking game, and they are being told the history of the series so they can understand it, but also they're being told that they can jump in with this particular one. Nintendo is gearing up for a big Metroid push in my opinion, and it's not just with this one epic game. But let me emphasize how epic this game is, or at least how epic Nintendo's trying to present it to us. Because not only did it have its own moment in the Direct, and not only did they open it up with a developer diary telling us the history of Metroid, more detailed than any other game during the Treehouse, and they had the opening segment of the Treehouse gameplay, but Metroid Dread was also given the closing segment of the Treehouse stream on June 15th for Nintendo's E3 sort of show. Metroid Dread got more attention than any other franchise at E3. When has that ever happened before? When has Metroid been at the forefront for Nintendo's marketing? Ever. Sure, games have been pushed and marketed to some degree, but this time around, Metroid Dread is the focus. This time around, for that core Nintendo fan base, Metroid Dread is perhaps the most exciting, at least for a great deal many of people. We're even seeing some incredible sales and pre-orders on Amazon right now for Metroid Dread, which is very, very promising for the sales potential of this game. It goes to show that there's been this great demand for Metroid, and Nintendo is doing a good job of conveying this new Metroid to the world. So yeah, pre-orders are going pretty well right now. But even going beyond that, if you take a look at Nintendo's Twitter page, who's the face? It is Samus. And there have been more Metroid Dread tweets than any other sort of tweet from it about any other Nintendo franchise or third-party franchise on Nintendo's social media since June 15th. This all bodes well for the marketing and the big push for Metroid Dread when it comes out this October. We will be getting more news and information about Metroid Dread as the days, weeks, and months sort of move forward towards the release this October, and surely more people will be buying into this game, getting more excited about it, and I have a pretty good feeling that Metroid Dread is going to do pretty darn well. This seems to be the big game that Nintendo really wants to push to the world. If you look at everything else that's coming out, at least from Nintendo, a lot of it's cool. I'm excited for Advance Wars, I'm excited for WarioWare, I'm excited for Mario Party. But it's clear that that showstopper kind of game, the only real big one that's coming straight from the Nintendo IP, I would say, is Metroid Dread. And from Nintendo's marketing, they seem to also kind of agree. And with the success of Metroid Dread, that bodes well for future Metroid games, perhaps Prime Trilogy next year, and perhaps Metroid Prime 4 after that. And who knows what'll come beyond that. If these Metroid games are all successful, as I think they will be, we could be looking at a lot more good quality Metroid games with some fair bit of consistency moving forward. And as a Metroid fan, that is incredibly exciting. But what do you guys think? What do you guys make of all this Metroid Dread hype? Are you interested in the game? Have you tried Metroid before? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways everyone, this is On Just Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care.